the qualifiers and get to the semis and finals, right?
This meeting is being recorded.
So today's session should help you all in understanding how to go about case prep. And once I've taught you that, you will be able to develop cases for yourself, not just like within 3 days or 4 days, but also within hours and minutes if need be. Say if you're given 50 minutes, 20 minutes, you should be fine with case prep. It doesn't take too long once you have the structure with you as to how to go about thinking about emotion. All right. So give me just 1 second. I'll put the motion in the chat and I'll clarify to you all what the rules for today's case prep session are going to be. Okay, give me just 1 second. Okay, so there is a motion that I had decided for you all, but I'm going to simplify it, okay? Because there are some people from the junior category as well. This is a mixed session. So let's keep this motion very simple because it's not about the complexity of the motion today. It's more about how you prepare or any given motion, right?
Is me, ma'am?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have came now only. So what we have discussed now till now?
We haven't discussed anything substantial yet. So today we are going to case prep. Case prep just refers to you developing a case line for yourself based on a motion that you're given. That's what we're going to try to do. I'm just putting it in the chat, the motion that we're going to be doing today. Don't be too scared looking at I don't know why it's not typing. Just a second.
Ma'am, what is the difference between motion and stance?
All right. Motion is the topic that you are given, and stance is which side of the motion you are going to be on. Do you understand? Okay. So you are given a motion, and for and against is your stance. So motion has both for and against sides, and whichever side you tend to fall on is your stance. Does that make sense?
Ma'am, I have a question that like the educator will say this home is this
house.
Yeah, this house. So we will say or the educator will say?
The not even the adjudicator. So when you get your motion 3 days prior to your debate, the day of the tournament, the motion will be put in this language. So it will start with this house. Nobody's giving it to you. Like whoever gives you the motion, when they come to you on the WhatsApp group, that's how they'll be crafted. Not something that you need to obsess about. I told you yesterday also. Just leave that be now. The thing about house. So look at this motion. It says THS, ecocentrism. THS is short for this house supports, okay? This house supports.
THS matlab? Says.
Somebody
This house support.
Yeah, this house supports. Now, ecocentrism is a word that many of us might not be acquainted with. That's a different ball game we're going to deal with right now. But just have a look at the motion. All of us understand what this house is, right? From yesterday's session. Are there any doubts about this house today? No, right? Supports, everybody understands. Okay, Parth, do you have a doubt? I saw you raising your hand slightly.
No, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Meher and Adrija, do you guys have doubts?
Do we need to speak for the motion or against the motion?
Right now, we will be prepping together, all of us together, from for the motion. Then we'll go on to prepping from against the motion if we have the time to. Okay. So first for, then against. Adrija?
Ma'am, I could not understand the meaning of start. Of start.
I couldn't quite.
I think she's
I think she's saying stance.
Okay, stance, right. So stance is which side of the house you are on. Is it for or opposition? Okay. So if you're speaking for the motion, that is your stance. If you're speaking against the motion, that is your stance. It's about which side are you on. So if it's a fight, if it's a verbal fight, debate is nothing but that. Going on, which side of the fight are you on? That stance. Okay. All right. So this house supports ecocentrism. This house, everybody understands from yesterday's session. Meher, your hands raised. Can I take your question in a minute? So this house supports means we as the house, as the representatives of the house, support ecocentrism. All right. Now the only thing that we need to do in order to understand this motion is know what ecocentrism is, right? Does anyone have any idea about what ecocentrism is? Or if you don't know what ecocentrism is, does anyone want to give it like a shot? Just like guess. Okay, Meher and Karthik, you're raising your
May
hands.
I?
So no, raise your hands. I'll
Yes,
pick
ma'am.
and then you.
Sorry, I think I did
So
that.
Meher, followed by Manas, followed by Parth, followed by Karthik. I think we'll take 4 responses for this question, and then others can get a chance in the other questions.
All right. So ecocentrism is pretty much when you putting value and calling like all living organisms and their habitat is essential, even if they're proven useless in a way. It's just putting value to it. Like
Okay, others in that same order which I specified.
It's my turn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that ecocentrism means that all the living organisms are in their own kind of habitat, not like human-centered. It is opposite to human-centered environment in which the human individuals are considered most important, and the ecocentrism says that everything is important, every living organism in its own
Ma'am,
habitat.
ma'am,
Cool.
ma'am, I think the
Fair enough.
Your voice is breaking actually.
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
Ma'am, your
guys,
voice,
Ma'am, your voice is
if you're going
breaking.
to respond to questions, I know,
ma'am, your voice is
and
breaking.
so that I know who's speaking.
yes, no.
Okay, is this better? Is this better?
Yes, ma'am. It is better.
All right. Okay. So others, yes, I'll take 2 more responses for this question. Whose name did I take initially? I think now I'll be choosing a new. So Shobna followed by Adam can answer because yeah, I'll take new responses today.
Yeah, so ecocentrism is basically like keeping the nature and the environment as the central theme while making policies, as opposed to something anthropocentric that is keeping human beings at the central prominence.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Fair enough. Next.
excuse me,
I
ma'am.
think that ecocentrism basically,
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Adam. Guys, please
yeah.
don't speak out of turn. It becomes very difficult to like just coordinate, right?
So ecocentrism basically is that when you are having a wider view of all organisms in nature, but having a specific focus on human beings as individuals at the same time. I think that's what ecocentrism is, where specific focus on human beings only, but you are having a look at all species in the nature.
Okay. Guys, fair enough. What I need you to do now, somebody's
Ishika, please mute.
muted. Secondly, there's a lot of disturbance in terms of people just throwing questions at each other. That shouldn't be happening. It just breaks the flow of whoever is speaking, right? So about your questions, I think they sometimes they get repetitive, and it might be very annoying for some people who have been listening to the same responses for multiple times. So what we have decided is that we will take your questions in a Google form later on, all right, and then we'll respond to those through an audio. So all of your questions will be answered, but outside of these sessions. Does that make sense? Just so we don't end up wasting time here. Cool. So you can ask me questions about what we are doing right now, but don't ask me questions about the tournament in general, because that you can store for later and we'll respond to them later outside of these sessions. Does that make sense? Nod if yes, right? Okay. About ecocentrism now. I think all of you are by and large right, but all of you are also very technical in your response, which is to say you are using certain specific words like human centric or environmental or environment centric. I want you to break free of those and give me the definitions in your own words, okay? So maybe you have immediately referred to the internet, or perhaps you already knew about ecocentrism, but only in a very like a bookworm sort of a fashion, right? I need you to break free of those in concepts that you have in your mind and give your own definition to things that you already know about. I mean, it shouldn't be too hard to do, right? If you have understood what you got from the internet, put it in your own language, try to enrich that definition. Okay, we'll give it another shot now. So all those who don't want to say anything, just lower your hands, and all those who would want to take another shot at defining ecocentrism can raise their hands. Ridhima followed by Adam, because these are the two hands I see raised on my screen right now.
Ma'am, ecocentrism is another word for biocentrism, which means that having a perspective, a view, or maybe a belief that the needs of human beings are not more important than any other living organism on the planet.
Okay, all right. Now, Ridhima, what I need you to do with your definitions is just not use one difficult, like not replace one difficult term with another difficult term. Do you understand? Like you can't say ecocentrism is like biocentrism, right? Because both of these terms are things that not an average reasonable voter would know about. And your adjudicator is going to be only an average reasonable voter. So whenever you're defining something, always presume that your adjudicator is an average reasonable voter. What does an average reasonable voter look like? They don't have any specialized knowledge about anything. They just will know very basic stuff, or they will try to understand the new stuff. But as long as you give them very logical reason, like very logical reasoning and like a line of thought that which they can follow. So always explain things like you're explaining them to a child in order to win a debate. Because adjudicators aren't always specialized in their knowledge, right? Not all of them are going to be environmentalists or botanists or whatever. So just keep that in mind and then try to define your terms. The simpler your language is, the better it is for you. Don't use the language from internet or like all of these books that are there, which are particularly about environmental issues. Yes, other responses, please.
Yes, ma'am. You said like after I have to answer.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I think is basically ecocentrism. Now it has on all species, but it has a specific focus on human beings. Means they are the centered part in ecocentrism, while having a focus on the rest as well. So it's for both.
Okay. Now, while I appreciate that even in your first attempt, you did not try to borrow a lot of words, like, right, a lot of heavy words from the internet. What I need you to do with your description, Adam, is just more. Okay, guys, again, there's a lot of unmuting happening without like out of turn, not appreciated. I'll take you all one by one. That's what we're here for. So back to Adam's description. Also listen to each other's, like whatever feedback I'm giving to your descriptions, listen to those, right? And try to imbibe them for yourself and give better descriptions. So it's not just about you responding and then getting a personalized feedback. All right, back to Adam. I think what you need to do is be more explanatory, right? So you're saying this school of thought, which is called ecocentrism, is more about human being the center of it all, right? But there can be so many other schools of thought wherein humans are at the center. Do you understand? Like almost every ideology. Do you know what capitalism is? Have you heard of it?
Ma'am,
Aspect
you're
of
not
any
audible. Can you
movement.
once
For
again
example,
repeat?
am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, internet is going to be a trouble today because raining, no? Okay, what I'm saying is that any movement that you might know about or any school of thought that you might know about, for example, feminism, for example, capitalism, all of them are human centric. Don't you think so? If humans wouldn't exist, then I mean, men and women wouldn't either, other genders wouldn't either, and the need for feminism wouldn't arise. So it's very easy for your opponent, Adam, to just go ahead and say that his explanation is very, very broad. I mean, where do we pick it up from? He's saying it's human centric. Any given movement or any given description can be human centric, regardless of which movement we're talking about, because it's humans who create it eventually, right? and that's why they are always at the center of it all. So try to like make it more refined, your description. Do you understand where I'm coming from? All right, fair
Yes,
enough.
ma'am.
um Aditya, followed by Vineet for now.
Ma'am, can I give a rebuttal, a sort of a rebuttal, not a like direct against rebuttal, but to
We
add its
haven't really come to,
definition?
okay, but it has to be in the
Ma'am,
form of a
yeah,
description.
yes, ma'am, of course. So I've written something down, of course, in my own words, according to my understanding. So
Okay.
ecocentrism or an ecocentric society would loosely translate to one which would necessitate the role of natural and environmental factors on how the society functions. So all the policies and the how it functions, how the individuals would interact with the government, let's say, because mostly all societies would be based on governments, and they are not that arbitrary to just function without a society, without a government. So how the policies would be formed and how the individuals would react or interact with those policies, all of that would necessitate that they be focused on natural and environmental factors. And it's not human centric. It's, even though it's for humans, it's not human centric. I feel like this is one of the like unique movements, ecocentrism, which would not be central to humans, even though it's being thought of, it's school of thought that's developed by humans. It's still necessitating the environmental natural factors, like all the nature itself, the ecosystems. So yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, you made some very relevant points. Again, a simple feedback, constructive feedback would be that you need to shorten your description, right? Considering you'll get only 3 minutes to speak. So your description cannot be more than 2 sentences. One, because people just fall out of interest. They think that you're just beating around the bush, not coming to what you're supposed to be saying. But secondly, also because you have to be concise when you're given only 3 minutes. And there's a lot you have to cover in terms of status quo, stakeholders, whatnot, whatever we discussed yesterday, but you might not have been
But
there
in
for
my
the
defense, I feel like if I'm only given 3 minutes, I would be able to do it because it's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's a written account, right? So of course I did
yeah.
go on tangents here and there, but yeah, I'll be able to do it. It's not like that. Yeah.
Yes. So, like, if it's a prepared speech, you definitely are less likely to deter from it. But then still try to make it more concise. Even when you're in a group discussion, it has to be like shorter so that everybody is engaged, right? Other than that, I think one very relevant point that's been raised and which all of us should agree to about egocentrism here is that egocentrism is a unique school of thought in its very nature of not being human centric. Do you understand? Although it's been created by humans who most likely are environmentalists, etc., this is one movement that does not focalize on humans as much as other movements do or as other schools of thoughts do, right? So the thing is that if you look at whatever wealth of information that we have in any discipline, be it psychology, be it sociology, be it literature, be it math, be it whatever, it's always about human lives, right? It always revolves around that, because we as humans devise things that will help us. I mean, who cares about the environment, right? Only when it impacts us do we start to care about it. The thing then is that any school of thought that you might come across, any ideology, any tenet that you might come across will most likely be human centric. In the modern world, and this is an argument that is made repetitively by thinkers, in the modern world, you will see that there is an absolute absence, or not absolute, but a very evident absence of anything other than humans, right? So the human centric perspective has only entrenched itself more deeply in the modern world. Why do I say that? Because before, even in like religious texts and other sorts of books and things that were written, there was still mention of nature being inextricable to the human lives, right? Nowadays it's all about man, and it's all about man can exploit nature, so man is superior to nature as well. Man can do whatever man pleases, right? Go read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which is an example of non-fiction. Go read any post-war World War I, World War II, post-war literature, any of the authors, Virginia Woolf or whoever you want to read. It's always fraught with human troubles. How are humans after the war? How do humans cope with emotional upheavals? How do humans get through political instability in their countries? Everything is about humans, right? And that's what is the grievance of the egocentric perspective. They say, why don't you start talking about other things as well? provided that, I mean, considering that human beings are not the only important determinants of how life is going to be, because it's not just humans' lives that is at stake, but also others, right? Like animals and all the other living beings, whatever. So ecocentrism is peculiar and unique in that sense, that it's not as human centric as other modern schools of thought are. Moving on, Abhay, followed by, and I think Vineet, I said Vineet is going
Yes,
to go next, followed by Anika,
yes,
followed by Abhay. All right.
yes. So in basic definition, eco means environment centered, centrism means to place a special emphasis on. So in basic word, ecocentrism is a belief which has on in under which special emphasis is on the environment rather than distinguishing itself with the other school of thoughts like already mentioned of feminism, etc. that concern that are more human centric, that is more emphasis of humans.
She's saying no,
All
just
right.
listen.
All right, guys, please mute yourself. Please don't end up unmuting yourself because it disturbs the speaker. I think rage is real time. That's what. Yeah, thanks. Um, Anika followed by Nishka.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. Yeah.
Ecocentrism is focusing on the whole environment rather than just the humans. It means focusing on all organisms and environmental bodies, and no organism is superior to the other.
Fair enough. It was very short, crisp, concise. Good enough. Nishka, quickly.
And focusing on the need of humans to be connected with the environment rather than proving superiority to it.
All right. Okay. I hear you all right. So I have given feedback to people who had something new to say, and for all others, I think it's fine because after a point it becomes repetitive. So it's the same feedback for you all. Try to keep it concise. Try to hit the nail on the head. Don't beat around the bush. Doesn't get you anywhere. Okay. Secondly, rather thirdly, have your facts right. You can't be citing inaccurate things, right? You can't be like hitting really off the mark. So you can't say that ecocentrism is about humans when it isn't actually about it. In fact, it's just the opposite, right? Because that's likely to hurt your case a lot more than help your case. So when you're uncertain about things, try to make a clever way around that rather than just being very explicit in your description. Okay, first hear the other team out, then try to make your mold your arguments accordingly. But right now, since you'll be given 3 days, it'll be easy for you to figure out what a term means exactly. So it's unlikely that you'd be going wrong with your description. Description should also be short, given that you have only 3 minutes in this tournament at least.
Ma'am, when we will get the topic and all, you have said
So,
today's.
okay. All right, guys. I
Excuse me,
understand.
ma'am.
No, listen, hear me out. No, hear me out. I might come across as cranky right now. I don't want to, but you guys can't be asking me questions in the middle of nowhere because it really delays the process of this training session. And this is particularly for everybody to come together and case prep. So, any question that you might have, which is not immediately relevant to what we're discussing, I need you to just write it down somewhere, put it in your notes on your phone, and give it to me later for me to respond to it through an audio note. That's what I prefer to do. Okay.
Ma'am, ma'am, I came a
Yeah.
little late, so ma'am, I wanted to ask that what were we reading for today?
Okay, so today we are case prepping, and the motion is this house supports ecocentrism. Everybody is trying to define ecocentrism. We haven't yet come to a settlement. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh,
Excuse me,
okay, you're
ma'am.
welcome. Yeah,
Ma'am, we can simply say that ecocentrism is nothing but only focusing on the environment.
that's very vague, don't you think? So for you to go ahead and say something, you have to first lay down a very a foundation upon which you will say something, right? I have to say that ecocentrism, first of all, before being anything else, is a school of thought. What is it? Is ecocentrism an animal? Is it a human being? What is it? What are we discussing in the first place? That's why I'm saying for you to be like to be on the safest side, think of the adjudicator as a very stupid person who doesn't know anything. Only then will you be able to go to the very fundamentals of a word. Do you understand? For you to describe ecocentrism, you have to start with this very basic idea of it being a school of thought, then build it up. What kind of a school of thought is it? It is a school of thought that focuses on environment particularly. Okay, but then the debate will probably be not just about environment but also humans, because humans and environment are always at a conflict when we're discussing environment motions. Okay, that's why environmental motions are debated upon on in the first place. Then you go on to thinking, how can I include the idea of humans within this ecocentric perspective? Like, how do I link humans to ecocentrism if ecocentrism in particular talks only about nature? Because ecocentrism doesn't just talk about nature, it talks about nature with respect to humans, and it forms a particular equation between the two, but it's a unique equation. So what do you think that equation would be like if you were to support the motion? How would you like to make to put this equation if you were to support ecocentrism? Think about that, if it hasn't become very complicated already. So
Ma'am,
ecocentrism we have established, listen to me, hear me out. Ecocentrism we have established is a school of thought that focuses only on environment. Now, try to think of ways where we can talk about this school of thought with respect to humans. Because at the end of the day, things have to boil down to what human beings are like with respect to a particular school of thought. Okay. Now, I'll take only two responses for each question now on Prisha, followed by Raghav, and then we move on with the discussion.
I actually have to say on what you just said, relating it to humans.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so ecocentrism also focuses on thinking of all organism as a evolutionary chain, including humans. So if we need to talk about the betterment of humans, we need to take in account the ecosystem that we living in, because it is a chain of evolution which is interrelated.
All right, lovely, right? I think this makes sense. And as the proponent speaker, you are free to make that characterization. It's reasonable, it's short, but it is also repetitive, right? You said evolution twice. So, like I said, if you want to save time, don't repeat yourself. Even though you think that's an important key term that you need the adjudicators to listen to, adjudicators will note it down if you say it once. If you repeat things, you're only wasting your time, right? Raghav, yes.
Like a thought centered to all the human beings or the abiotic components in a very short way. So an idea or a display, does it mean that?
You will have to come again. I didn't quite catch that.
So like an idea or a thought or a belief, as you say, like centered to a point, like your thoughts are closed inside to the abiotic components.
Okay, fair enough. But I think what Prisha is saying is more relevant here. I'll tell you why. Because when you want to link this school of thought, which is not human centric, to humans, what you're doing is trying to make ecocentrism, which is not human centric, still human centric. Do you understand? You're trying to pull in human beings. Because as proponent speaker, you are saying we have to support ecocentrism because humans need to change their approach. So as a proponent speaker, this is how I would define my thing, right? I would say ecocentrism is a movement panel or is a school of thought that believes in environment being the center of everything, but then this approach has to be taken by somebody in order for environment to be benefited, because environment doesn't suddenly grow hands and like limbs to benefit itself, right? It's always human action that's going to lead to the betterment of environment. That's why I think ecocentrism directly links back to the idea of humans, insofar as humans have to understand the centrality of environment. Do you understand?
So
The
human
centrality.
centrism, so the human centrism includes ecocentrism.
Yeah. So, okay, this is a very simple, this you have simplified it a little too much. But then, yes, I am saying that ecocentrism might be about the centrality of environment. But panel, we need to pay attention to the fact that the centrality of the environment is to be understood by nobody else but humans. So this centrality also has at its center humans and their approach to the environment. Does this argument make sense?
Yes.
Although it's like very circuitous.
Yeah. And also, can we make it in a this way too, that human centrism is like the humans are adapting and changing their habits and all. The idea which
Yeah,
includes.
so that is that. Okay, so those will count as examples, right? If I'm giving a description, I think this isn't enough for people to understand. I give examples. I say, if I as a human being, if I as a person who comes from the urban landscape want to give this centrality to the environment and want to, like, if I choose to not prioritize my life as more than the environment that I'm living in, then what I'm going to be doing is abandon plastic usage, right? Those kinds of things. I'm more likely to cause a little bit of discomfort to myself in order to benefit the environment, which means I'm giving centrality to the environment, right? Which means I am undertaking an ecocentric perspective. That's an example. Now let's move beyond the description. So these are various ways of describing, right? I told you how to describe: concise, on hit the nail on the head, all right? Don't beat around the bush. Concise, that's precisely what it means. Secondly, try to keep your definitions very enriched, so that, in the sense that they're not repetitive. Okay, enrich, not that you use words from the internet. Really doesn't help, guys. Really doesn't help. Fancy words don't help. Simplified language does in a debate. Thinking of the adjudicator as a child does help you. Okay, because that shows clarity of thought. The
Excuse
moment I
me,
start using, yes.
ma'am. Actually, I just found a definition like of ecocentrism. Like I constructed it. Added something to it. So, do you want to hear that, ma'am? Just so I could get some feedback and everything.
Um, uh, Ananya, see, okay, I can hear you out for now, but what we're going to be doing from now on, for every question, we'll take two responses. No person
Yes.
will get to repeat themselves.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am. I know that. That's why I especially requested you to
Yeah,
do
cool.
that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Ecocentrism finds inherent value in all of nature. It takes a much wider view of the world than anthropocentrism, which sees individual humans and the human species as more valuable than all the other organisms. It is the broadest of the worldviews. Changing our worldview to ecocentrism, however, offers hope for solving the environmental crisis.
Okay, Ananya, which grade are you in?
Ma'am, eighth.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Understand. You talked about anthropocentrism. For you to just mention anthropocentrism, you also have to explain to me what anthropocentrism is, because if you were listening to me, I told you that adjudicator doesn't know about anything. I, as an average reasonable voter, probably don't know about what anthropocentrism is, right? I don't know that anthropocentrism is a school of thought that puts humans as the center of it all, right? It's only when you come to read of it do you understand it. I think, are you so is this a definition that you came up with by yourself, or did you refer to the internet?
Ma'am, I did refer to the internet. I did use the internet, but I also added some new things to it, and
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. So even if you're saying that this is against anthropocentrism, it's a very nice way of saying it, but then all that we have been discussing so far, ever since Aditya talked about this point against Adam's point, it being like human, not being human centric, is about it being against anthropocentrism, right? Because anthropocentrism is another fancy name for human centric ideologies, right? So if you go ahead and say human centric ideology, it's better than saying anthropocentrism, because it shows that you know the concept that you're talking about. Do you understand? So you wouldn't have to explain. I mean, why would you try to fit in 10 difficult words in your speech and then end up wasting your time explaining those words, right? Respond to this very simple question. What you want to be doing on the contrary
is
is
to
that you
use
want to
simple language so that which
simply
shows
talk.
clarity of thought. Yes, ma'am.
Clarity of thought, and which shows that it's not derivative. It's not from the internet. It's not copy paste, right? It
Yes.
has to be your original thinking. Let's move on now. I think we've consumed enough time talking about the description of the terms. It has to be short. That's one very important thing. Moving on. How do you now put this idea of ecocentrism that we have developed so far as government side, and how do you support it? Like, what do you do next? Who are your stakeholders? Let's begin there. Who would you choose as your stakeholders? Only two responses based on whose hand is raised first. Mishti and Ananya, first lower your hands. Mishti, yeah. Lower your hand if you have nothing to say right now.
Ma'am, can you elaborate on the question?
Ma'am, I just want to make some add upon some points on ecocentrism.
Mishti, we've moved beyond that, right? So try to answer those new questions now. Is that fair enough? Okay. So now we're discussing how will you support ecocentrism? Like, who are the stakeholders that you will choose as the government side? Try to think of it. Now, what we're going to be doing is that I'll take one answer from junior category, one from middle category, and one senior category for every question. So one has to be from 4th to 6th grade, one to 7th to 9th, and the other from 10th to 12th. Just mention your grade when you're answering, okay? And also rename yourself, putting your classes or grades alongside your name, just so I know who to choose. All right. So this time I need somebody from the junior category to also raise their hand, 4 to 6th. For middle category, it will be Ridhima. Who else wants to answer this question about stakeholders? Raise your hands now. Come on, guys, raise your hands now. Yes. Ananya, which section, which grade 8th, right?
Ma'am, 8th.
So middle category is already done and dusted. Ridhima is representing the middle category for this question. Anyone from like 10th to 12th grade or like 4th to 6th, because we need multiple perspectives from different people. The question is that who are your stakeholders in this debate if you are going as the government side and you have to support ecocentrism? Who will you choose as your stakeholders? Doesn't have to be an accurate answer, guys. Just give it a shot. Okay, Parth from the junior category.
Ma'am, I can't understand this question.
And Meher can go for.
I couldn't understand
Stakeholders. The question, okay, do you guys remember who stakeholders are from yesterday's discussion? Just give me a thumbs up if you do. Does no one remember who stakeholders are? I think most of you were missing from yesterday's session. That's the thing. Okay, stakeholders are your people that you need to discuss in your very first speech. These are people who are important to the debate, which means if I'm talking about this house supports ecocentrism, who will my stakeholders be? Now, if I use this example, I'll end up giving the answer, right? Which I don't want to be doing. Let's take another example. If I say this house regrets the glorification of motherhood, this is one motion, okay? If you regret the glorification of motherhood, who are your stakeholders? Who are the people that you will be discussing in this debate? They become your stakeholders. For example, mothers, right? Women in general, they become my stakeholders. Secondly, their children, because motherhood means you engendering children and then raising them or whatever. The children became the stakeholders. The society can also be a stakeholder, as in how will society change if motherhood was regretted or not regretted. So society can be a larger collective stakeholder. What I'm trying to say then is that stakeholders are people who can be individuals or groups or collectives, depending on who you seek to benefit through what you're proposing, or who you seek to, or who you think is the culprit and needs to mend their ways. For example, in an environment, in a motion on environment, my stakeholder can also be the industrialists who pollute the environment. But those are not the people I'm trying to benefit in my debate. Those are the people who I'm trying to target as the culprits and saying that, look, they need course correction. Their course correction comes through what I am proposing, that they pay taxes for the environmental damage that they cause. Do you understand? Does that make sense or was it too complicated?
Ma'am,
I have a doubt.
I have lots of network issue now. So, will this recording will also appear in the YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah, it always does. Yes, that should never be a question. All the recordings will be shared with you all.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Ma'am, can I answer?
Ma'am, can we start? Yes.
I need you guys to not ask me doubts if they are not immediately relevant to what we're doing. So if you have any other doubts that are not relevant to what we're doing, lower your hands.
Ma'am, it's related to this house.
Ma'am.
Sorry, Karthik, I'll take you first.
Ma'am, my doubt is that, ma'am, like on a particular motion, we say this house supports this. So, ma'am, the person for the topic will support the motion. So, ma'am, if we say this house regrets this, so the person speaking for the motion will also regret it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So he will speak against it.
Yeah, so the difference between this house supports and this house regrets is, then if the motion is this house supports, then the person who is on the government is supposed to support, right? But if it is this house regrets, then the person who is on the opposition will support. Do you understand? Because I, as the government, have a different role now. I want to regret something. So support is
Okay.
the opposite of regret, right? All right, fair enough. Who else? I'll take Swara now. Swara, do we have a question here?
Now I was just asking that when the is it compulsory to always start every paragraph
Can we leave?
with the sentence?
Guys, I really don't appreciate you guys disturbing in between, especially the junior category kids. I mean, we have to be accommodative, right? Swara, you finish. Yes, please continue speaking.
My
Yes, ma'am.
question is that
Ma'am, my stakeholder will be the environment.
Parth, just a second. So let Swara finish her doubt question, whatever it is. I haven't been able to discern what it is just yet. And then
Sorry,
we'll come to you. Yes, Swara.
so for this house supports can we do like this house and then some other things?
You don't have to say this house. You can say anything. You can just say, panel, we think ecocentrism is a good thing or a bad thing. That way also. So your language is your language. You don't have to use some words. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Because just because they are there in the motion. All right. Parth, yes, quickly, guys. Quickly
yes, ma'am.
ask me your doubts. Whatever it is. Yeah.
Ma'am, my stakeholder will be the environment.
The environment, perfect. Okay. I want these one word answers like this, okay? Because there are a lot of you. So other people, yes. Aditya followed by Janvi followed by Ridhima. Quickly, who are your stakeholders?
Now I have a few. So environmentalists. Can I just like make one sentences for each? They're not many.
You give me the stakeholders, we'll discuss them collectively. What about that?
Environmentalists, unbiased activists that are eager to do what's essential, education systems, media, and for culprit sites, I guess industrialists and so on.
Are you sure you will be able to cater to all of these stakeholders in the 3 minutes that you get? Because you
Yes,
will
ma'am,
have
I
to
think
talk about all of them.
to be cohesive, yes, I might be. Not I
Ma'am,
might be, I will.
ma'am,
Okay,
can I
all
answer
right.
now from the middle category?
Yes, sure.
Ma'am, first of all, of course, it is environment, then it is the society or humans, and then it is the environmentalists.
Okay, society, environmentalist. So let's just see which are the new things that we're getting. Society, somebody said environmentalist. Guys, why don't you put it in the chat also? I mean, that's a prompter
Ma'am,
way of doing it. Yeah. Who else? Anushri can answer, and then lastly,
Mom, I think the primary stakeholders are the normal citizens. Like we as humans have to improve our behavior collectively, and we have to change our habits, which will eventually lead to.
okay, one word answer.
Okay.
Stakeholder question is a one word answer, right? Yeah. Okay, citizens, fair enough. Don't repeat the stakeholders. So if somebody has already mentioned your stakeholder, lower your hand. If you have new stakeholders, then it makes sense for you to speak, right? Anvi, I'll take you next. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No, ma'am, you're pronouncing it right. Ma'am, I think that the stakeholders here would be humans or the society, the government, the environment, and living organisms.
Perfect. Okay, government is something new here. Who else? Raghav?
Yeah, environmentalist.
Okay, that's a repetition. That's why I'm saying, guys, listen as much as you speak, just so we know that we're on the same page, right? Adam, is there anything new?
I think both biotic and abiotic factors, which may include other things as well.
Okay, so that's the broadest term for
And
everything
human.
that everybody else is talking about, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
right? Okay, fair enough. Janvi,
Plants.
which is the environment, right? A very, very
Yeah,
micro part. Okay.
ma'am, living organisms. The plants come in the category of living organisms.
Yes. So, yeah. So don't try to narrow it down too much or broaden it too much. Try to find out new stakeholders. Like government is clearly a new stakeholder. Citizens, yes, new stakeholders. Environmentalists, maybe, can be stakeholders. Think about more of them. Can you think of more, or should we stop thinking about stakeholders now? I think we can stop. 3 stakeholders are enough for a 3 minute long speech. We should stop. Now, how are these stakeholders relevant? Okay, I can't be taking responses for this, so lower your hands. Now, this is how I'm going to talk about stakeholders. How do I talk about stakeholders in my speeches, ma'am? This is how you go about talking about your stakeholders, right? In your very first speech, the description of what you think the word means should come, followed by who are your stakeholders. Now, stakeholders are people. That panel, we've already told you what ecocentrism is according to us as the proposition speakers or proponents of the motion. We now think it's important for us to delineate who these stakeholders are. The stakeholders are as follows. They can be environmentalists, citizens, the government, as long as you're able to prove why these people are relevant to the motion, right? How do I prove? I say I support ecocentrism. For me to support ecocentrism, the government will have to take initiatives because we believe that legislations are the first step towards bringing about a reform in society, which means you have made government a relevant stakeholder because for you as the proponent of the motion, you think it's important for the government to act as an actor to go ahead and make laws towards ecocentrism. Do you understand? If I don't think laws will work, if I think it has to be ideological change, I think laws can be easily broken, especially by the rich people who have enough money to pay fines and do what they like, right? If I'm a super rich person who drives a Mercedes, I wouldn't care about littering the road because I know I can pay a fine of like 2000 rupees anytime, any day. Sometimes people are careless about their expenditure, right? They don't mind paying fines. In which case, laws will not work. In which case, you can say that, look, panel proponent is being very bizarre with their characterization of stakeholders being the government because nobody listens to the government. The government is only for the poor, right? Which is fearful of like paying fines. I would rather define my stakeholders as the citizens because I think it's ideological breakthrough that we have to bring about in the society. An ideological breakthrough happens when environmentalists ingrain fear in the minds of the people about environmental harms. Do you understand? How can I make environmentalists my stakeholders? I will go ahead and say that look, environmentalists are the people who have very specialized knowledge about how environment is being harmed, right? So, global warming, you and I might know about global warming, but an environmentalist would know better because they have studied about it, because they have known about it, because they have studied what has been happening to the world since the pre-industrial times, right? And how it has gone bad. So, environmentalists have specialized knowledge. So, we can say that these people will be able to convey the threat to the environment better than the politicians. That's why I think environmentalists are more important stakeholders in my debate than the politicians. Do you understand? Not all stakeholders can be equally important in your debate. You can't say, or in your case, you can't say that, ma'am, I am going to talk about government, I'm going to talk about environmentalists, I'm going to talk about the citizens, I'm going to talk about everybody. No, because you have to prioritize. What is your game plan? How do you want to support ecocentrism? There are 1,000 ways of doing anything. I say this house supports feminism. I can support feminism in my family by being vocal about whatever I need as a girl in my family, or I can support feminism on a national level. I can form a party, right? Or I can do social service for other women as well, not just women from my family. Do you understand? There are degrees of participation. There are degrees of supporting something. I can support something on a familial level, on a family level, on an interpersonal level. I can support something on a macro level. What is macro? Macro is supporting within big institutions, right? Through government, through NGOs, through fighting against the government, perhaps, right? Through campaigns, through awareness campaigns, and all of those things, right? There are degrees of participation in support. So I might think that, oh, I protected one woman in my entire life from being harassed. I think I am a feminist. Some other people might think that no, for you to be a feminist, you have to be always proactively vocal, not just about women from your own family, but also about women you don't even know, right? So for you also, you have to define how ecocentrism is going to be practiced, who will practice it, which means you have to decide. If I remember two responses, I remember Anuvi's response where she said government. So she might use government, right, as a stakeholder, but Aditya, as opposed to Anvi, had a lot of stakeholders. So you will have to sift through them and find out one against Anvi's, right? Yes, Aditya, do you have a response to that?
Yes, ma'am. I actually, of course, if I were to explain or expatiate on the whole stakeholder debate, I do have them prioritized. It's not like all of them have the similar weightage.
Yeah, I'm not inculpating you with that either. I'm just saying that once you mention, it's good. Like as many stakeholders as you're mentioning right now, it's good. But when you're debating, ensure that your stakeholders are the ones that are like the best, and they're chosen and hierarchized, right? Okay, guys, why do you have your hands raised? I haven't even asked a question yet.
Ma'am, I had a doubt.
Okay, doubt. Yes, Ridhima.
Ma'am, for stakeholders, can like the hunters and all the tribal people be a stakeholder?
Yeah, definitely. Anything under the sun can be your stakeholder as long as you're able to justify why that is your stakeholder. Do you understand? There's no limit being set to who your stakeholders can be. They can be tribal people, they can be the government, they can be anything, biotic, abiotic, whatever, as long as you're able to defend them. Everything comes down to your reasoning.
I'm
Okay,
like
Raghav, is
even.
there a question?
How will these stakeholders be used, like in the debate?
All right. So, how do I incorporate these stakeholders in my speeches? Try to think of it by yourself, all right? But I'll also try to give you some explanation on that. If you have to make some arguments, they will always be with respect to, okay, so let's say we are saying this house supports ecocentrism. For me to support something, I also have to give you a fair idea as to what I mean by supporting it, right? Like I said, support can mean a thousand things. It can mean support by just planting trees by myself, or support can mean being vocal about it, launching awareness campaigns, investing money specially set aside for planting trees in not just my colony but everybody else's, right? So support can be in various degrees. Now you as a debater have to define, what do I mean by support? For you to define this idea of support, you have to know who are your stakeholders. Do you understand? Because if I'm talking about the government as a stakeholder, I'm talking about macro level support, right? I'm not talking about family level support. If I'm talking about people as a stakeholder, though, I'm talking about family level support. I am saying if I turn off my tap timely, if I don't take a, if I take a bath like with a bucket and whatever they call it, and not a shower, I'm doing my bit. I am being ecocentric. So your idea of ecocentrism gets defined with respect to the stakeholders that you have chosen, right? Government is macro, family is individual participation. Do you understand?
How can we define government as a stakeholder?
Okay, like I said, anybody can be a stakeholder, because who is a stakeholder? Just a participant in a debate. Who do you think is
Yes,
a
ma'am.
relevant actor, right? So government can also take steps towards ecocentrism. That's why it can be a stakeholder. If government so pleases, it can actually, in its campaigns and rallies which they do or perform before elections, they can actually go ahead and say that, look, we will be promoting ecocentrism, so vote for us, right? There are 1,000 ways in which governments can come forward in order to bring about an ecocentric perspective. I think the strongest stakeholder is the government, right? Because they can legislate. And once something is legislated, you can't go against it. You have to stand by it, because otherwise you will be paying fines.
Yes, ma'am.
Meher?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, like for example, this the stakeholder is the government, and I have my points to justify it. And what if the person next to me says like they are not the correct stakeholders, but I have the justification for that. So what will be
Like
the
I
next?
said, okay, very relevant question. This is one question that everybody should know the response to. If there is a conflict between stakeholders, if government says that we want this stakeholder and opposition says we want another stakeholder, how do you resolve it? If you are a smart debater, what you would try to do is you would like try to talk about both and say that look, my stakeholder will do better. Stakeholder will do better, right? Why? How can you do that? For example, I choose government as the stakeholder, as the most relevant stakeholder, and Ananya chooses the environmentalist. Fair enough. I will say as government that I mean as proposition that governments will be able to do better because they will be able to legislate. Once legislations happen, once there are acts and laws and rules introduced, people are more likely to follow rules, right? Because nobody would wear a mask even when their life was threatened. They would only start wearing a mask when there was a legislation for it, that you will now pay a 2,000 rupees fine if you don't wear a mask in a public space. Do you understand the strength of laws?
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
why I think government is important. Now, Ananya might want to say that environmentalists are important. Nitiksha is being stupid, but then she'll have to tell me why, right? Why does she think that government is an irrelevant actor? She can do that in multiple ways. It's just that it has to be a convincing argument. She can go ahead and say that, look, environmentalists would do better because, like I said earlier, also, government is only for the poor, only for the people for whom 2,000 rupees is a big deal, not for the rich people, not for the ultra rich people who drive like a Mercedes and they stop at Starbucks and waste their money here and there, and they have enough to expend basically. They wouldn't care about fines as much, right? But secondly, you don't even have to stop there. You can say that, look, government functional, the laws are as strong as its implementation is, right? The laws do not work if they are just enshrined in the constitution and there's no implementation. which means I can draft laws and then I can have a very corrupt police personnel, which doesn't really go ahead and implement those laws, which means people still get a way out. People still don't go ahead and wear masks. People still don't go ahead and follow ecocentrism because I will always evade law by bribing people. And bribe is an unfortunate truth. So Ananya has 1,000 ways in which she can counter my characterization. As long as she is being logical, I will buy her stakeholder as well. So three kinds of situation can happen here. Adjudicators will only buy my idea of government because Ananya's doesn't sound very convincing. Okay. In the second situation, the adjudicators would say Nitiksha's really doesn't make any sense anymore after we have heard Ananya. I think Ananya's characterization should be given more weightage. In the third situation, adjudicators would say, wow, this is a really heated debate. Both the stakeholders are equally relevant. Both of them have to be pushed forward, and we have to see who is able to conclude better by the time the reply speeches are over. Do you understand? It's on you as a debater to identify how do you make your stakeholder relevant. If you think your stakeholder has lost its power because of what the other side has said, try to deal with both the stakeholders so that even if both are credited with some merit in their description, you will win the debate regardless because you try to incorporate them both. Does that make sense? I mean,
Excuse,
it might be complex, but it isn't actually if you try to go ahead and do that.
excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, Ananya.
Ma'am, can we say that the upper middle class and the non, the wealthy people can also invest in campaigns and things like that, supporting ecocentrism in our debate, ma'am?
You can say anything under the sun. I mean, I'm never going to say no to an argument, because it's all about how you put it across and how you reason it out. Okay. Just a second, my internet is just like acting up. Yeah, I'll take Aditya followed by Rishita.
Some other question about like the actual structure of the debate and how it will go in the movement. So would we be given the stance or like how would that function?
Your stance will be given to you. Yes, I think that was clarified during the orientation as well. The stance will be given to you beforehand, so no need to worry about that. Rishita.
Ma'am, as you said, like if we think that our stakeholder is losing its importance, then we should start talking about both. So in this case, how can we talk about both of them? Can you give an
See,
example?
remember the thing that I told you about comparisons as to how your rebuttal speech, your reply speech should also have comparatives. What does comparative mean? I talk about my case, but also the other person's case. Now, case is always inclusive of everything, also the stakeholders. So when I'm being comparative in my analysis, I will definitely analyze my stakeholder as against your stakeholder in order to prove the superiority of my stakeholder and its relevance in the debate. Does that make sense? So that's where you have to deal with both the stakeholders. What I'm trying to say is don't think that I'm going to talk only about my stakeholders, let the other side say whatever they want to, I don't care, and I will win the debate. That never happens. Okay, you can't just keep talking about your stakeholder even if the other team has tried to introduce a new stakeholder. You also have to consider the other stakeholders relevance and genuinely weigh it. Is it possible for that stakeholder to be involved? Can I involve it in some way possible? Right? Because involvement doesn't automatically mean that you have accepted the other person's stakeholder. It might also mean that I have involved it in my debate. Now I'm going to destroy it by saying that my stakeholder is still better, even though their participation is also possible. Which means the government's participation is more important, even if environmentalists are also relevant stakeholders. I'm not denying that. I don't have to. I just have to prove that government is still better than the environmentalist, and I might take the debate. Does
Yes.
that make sense? So guys, your arguments to give this, like to give all of this a conclusive, like just to call it a day and to consolidate all that we have done today, all your constructives will always stem from your idea of stakeholders, from your idea of status quo, and from your idea of characterization of motion or the description of the terms in the motion. Don't think you will be able to find constructives or arguments without creating this foothold for yourself. That's why I discussed in this case prep only these two things. The third thing that we missed out on and are running short of time on, but I'll still take some minutes to cover this, is status quo. So I hope everybody remembers what status quo is from previous discussions.
Yes, ma'am.
Status quo, for everyone who looks clueless right now, is just the context within which you place your motion, right?
From the
So
current
this,
situation.
yeah, but let me explain this to the people who are uninitiated. This house supports ecocentrism, could be happening in America, could be happening in India, could be happening anywhere on the globe. How would you like to contextualize your debate, right? Sometimes some debates do better in the developing world than they do in the developed world. I'll give you an example. This house will ban private education. Okay. This motion simply cannot operate in the developed world, and so your status quo cannot be rooted in the developed world, because in the developed world private public schooling distinction isn't very evident. There you have public schools, they have quality education, everything's hunky dory as far as education is concerned. In India you have this very stark difference of private and public. That's why this debate is more relevant to developing countries where this education system is actually followed. So status quo is basically that. Where would I like to put my debate, my motion? What is the space and the time in which I want to put this debate? Okay, questions. I think Karthik followed by Aditya, followed by Ananya, followed by Rishita. Remember this order, please.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, like my question is that, ma'am, will so the category, the junior category, that is 4 to 6, so they would have got their motion today morning. So, will the middle category get it tomorrow morning?
Karthik, I will reserve this question because I told you, right? If there's any question that's not pertinent to what we are discussing right now, it will be taken through a Google form later. Okay. Yes, Aditya.
Yes, ma'am. So two questions, one pertaining to this topic or more of a take on it, and the second is a question about the debate itself. So the first would be this status quo element in the debate or the competition itself. Would it be specified, or is it up to us and our like um, our articulate thought that we can put it in this country or put it in this ecosystem to present it well, or will it be given to us? Or can it be given to us?
So sometimes it's specified. For example, this house as India would do so and so. So it's within the motion that you have to talk about only India. But sometimes it's as general as this house supports ecocentrism, in which case it's up to you to define. Okay? Depends on the
Yes.
motion. You'll get to know once you read the motion.
Right. And ma'am, the second thing pertaining
Give
to
me
the
just
topic.
1 second. My battery is running low. My laptop would go off anytime. I'll just get my charger, please. I'm sorry about this. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yes, next question, please.
Yes, ma'am. It's quite a short one. Ma'am, is the structure of the debate like in any specific format, or can we just like is there some structure to the debate, like our speech or whatever?
See, a structure is definitely recommended, right? Because there's marks for method, 10 marks separately for method.
Ma'am, but that
But
comes
this,
into like our own framing of stuff. But is there something that's that
yeah, it can be
predefined?
unique to you. Yes, the structure that I have given is only an advisory thing, right? You can either take it or leave it, but then you have to have a structure. It can be yours or mine. So status quo followed by characterization of the words, followed by stakeholders, followed by three constructives at best is the best structure for me. It works for me. Now for you, it might be something else that works, right? But there has to be a structure. That's for sure. Cool. Anushri?
Ma'am, will it be specified whether we have to oppose the given topic or the given motion, or like we can
Guys,
just
yes.
decide whether we
Yes.
want to support or oppose
I
it?
really don't know why there is such a repetition of questions. I mean, this question's been answered 1,000 times, right? So there's definitely going to be a stand that's going to be given to you. All right. I hope it's
Everyone will be
clear.
specified differently. Like everyone will get a different, like.
Yes, yeah, it's bound to be like that, right? So if you're going as proposition, there have to be equal number of people who are going as opposition for you
Okay,
to
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yes, that's what my query was.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you. Ananya?
When do we have to introduce our stakeholders, during the constructive speech or rebuttals?
Okay, so this is very important, right? Constructive speech is always about what you want to say from your side. So stakeholder is always what you want to say from your side, right? So this should come in your constructive speech. I mean, it doesn't make sense for it to come in the reply speech, okay? So your stakeholders, your characterization of the motion, your status quo, your three arguments, two arguments. I mean, it doesn't matter what the number of arguments are. Just they have to be there in the constructive speech because rebuttal speech cannot have any new material. It's called dump. If you add something new in your second speech which did not feature in your first speech, it'll be called dump. Okay, that's called dump material. It's not considered by the adjudicator. It's automatically denied entry into the sheets of the adjudicator. Okay. Sharvi, yes, I'm sorry if I
Ma'am,
missed.
actually, I have another question.
Okay.
Ma'am, ma'am, what is preemption?
Preemption is when you mute yourself, please. My voice is coming back to me. Yeah. So preemption is when you are the government, for example, and you try to think of the motion as the opposition from the other side first, so that you have a clear idea about what is going to come from the other side, which you need to tackle and counter. Do you understand? So preemption is this very smart technique of first thinking about what my opponent would say and then coming back to my own case because I already have gauged what the other side is likely to say. Does that make sense?
Ma'am, that's actually very helpful. And ma'am, in our constructive speech, I think you explained this thing before, that ma'am, sometimes it's just that we have to explain one single, argument. I'm talking about the proposition, and instead of just putting in 5 to 6 arguments. So ma'am, like, how
Yeah,
do
I
we?
get.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember saying that. So what I meant by that was that quantity never matters over quality. Okay. So if one of your argument is very strong, which means it has everything relevant in the sense that it talks about multiple stakeholders, it talks about their relevance, it talks about how everything links, right? There have to be linkages. As long as that argument is holistic and cohesive, right? You will probably take the entire case from the other side down with this one argument against their five arguments. It's all about the relevance of an argument, okay? So never think of it as, oh, I gave six arguments, they gave four arguments, so I am bound to win. And so if I lose, the adjudicator is wrong. No, the adjudicators would always think about who made more sense, right? Not about how much did a person speak or how many arguments did they have under the belt.
Yes, ma'am. But one disadvantage of this thing is that, even if we that in our second speech we cannot put in any more arguments which we might need if they rebut our one single argument.
Okay, this happens. This happens oftentimes. I understand where you come from, but there's a smart way of dealing with it. So what you're saying is that I said something, and then the opposition side said something which I hadn't preempted or I hadn't anticipated. How do I counter that without saying something new in my reply, right? For that, a very easy way to go about things is that you try to make a rebuttal which might not be directly linked to your first speech, but you try to link it, right? Even if I'm trying to make a new argument, I can always find one strand that associates this almost new argument to the argument that was already made in the first speech. Do you understand? I can say that, panel, as an extension of the argument that I made in my first speech, I would want to say so and so and so. Do you understand? It's about playing smart sometimes. It's about trying to bring a new argument, but also at the same time trying to integrate it with the already made arguments. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Now
And
that
ma'am,
requires practice.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, please continue. Please continue. Like you were saying
No, that's
something.
okay. I'm saying it requires practice for you to learn how to extend an argument without making it seem a new argument. All right. So practice for yourself, guys. I mean, there's this site called hellomotions.com. If you go there, there are a lot of motions there. You can pick any motion from there, like on environment, on anything, and you can prep for yourself, like set a 20 minutes timer, 25 minutes timer, try to preempt all of those things. That's always at your disposal and something that I highly recommend. Yes, I'll take Shobna now.
Yeah, so my question basically remains to the stakeholders part. Like when we are explaining why we consider a certain stakeholder to be the most prominent one, is it like advisable to cite any example or like a real life, global instance to just support your statement?
Okay, this is a very relevant question that everybody I have like previously responded to, but for anyone who missed it, guys, examples are always secondary in the sense that your examples will only make sense when you have an analysis to it. I might say that Greta Thunberg did so and so and so for the environment, but then what is the relevance of it? Like, you have to explain to me what is the reasoning behind you citing Greta Thunberg. Just saying that, oh, Greta Thunberg did this, so an Indian activist should also follow in her footsteps, doesn't prove anything. Do you understand? Examples in vacuum are null and void. As long as you give me a reasoning that, look, Greta Thunberg is relevant to my case because this is what I think she's been doing as a young activist. It's important for her to be a role model for the other people who are in school who think we can't do much because we are not financially independent, because we're dependent on our parents, so our time will come later when we support the environment. So from that logic and from that viewpoint, we think Greta Thunberg is good enough insofar as it creates the awakening that even people at school level can create awareness, right, and be global leaders. So if I have given you a reasoning that Greta Thunberg as a global leader is fine because she inspires other people, then I can cite Greta Thunberg. But I can't say that just because Greta Thunberg has done something and she is famous, an Indian activist should also do that. Because not every famous person is also a good person at the end of the day, right? They're famous for no reason at all. Sometimes.
Yeah.
All right.
But like, can I add something else?
Yeah, fine. Go
Like,
ahead.
as we were talking about taking government and the citizens as stakeholders, so for now we were talking for the motion. If even if we speak against the motion, we can still cite government and the citizens as our stakeholders if you have the proper reasoning, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Just that your priorities change, right? If you don't want to support ecocentrism and you take government as your stakeholder, then you will say that there's no chance on earth that the government will ever be able to support ecocentrism through legislations because you have to reject ecocentrism.
Also, the way it affects the citizens. For example, I was going to cite the example of Sri Lanka in this because when the government mandated organic farming there, it played a major role for why the economy collapsed after all. So
Yeah, fair
that's
enough.
why.
Yes. So your example helps only when it is preceded by reasoning.
Yeah.
Don't just cite examples, give reasoning, then follow it up with an example.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay, guys. Next, Sharvi.
Yes, I have two questions. The first one is how can we introduce the status quo in our speech?
I will just respond to that. Meanwhile, I see that a lot of you are just languishing here because you don't want to be here anymore. Whoever wants to leave because it's beyond an hour can leave now. Case prep is over. If you have doubts, you can stay back. But otherwise, you can leave if you so please. Sharvi, your question was how you can include status quo, right? It's not about including status quo. It's about not being able to make a case if you don't have status quo in your head, right? So this house supports ecocentrism until and unless you think about a situation within which you want ecocentrism to function, you can't really make ecocentrism function, right? Do you understand? Until and unless I say that I want ecocentrism to be taking place somewhere, where is it happening? Down a rabbit hole, up in the clouds, where is it happening? It has to happen in a context, right? In India as a developing country or in a developed country, or I would say ecocentrism should be supported across the globe as a global community's effort. That is also doable. Take down national boundaries, take down these very parochial, like myopic identities of religion, of nationalities. Let's come together as a globe, let's come together as a world, and the world leaders should promote egocentrism. That's another way of going about it. I mean, your call, guys. Make it as big or as small as possible as long as you can reason it out well, right? It all depends on your status quo being reasoned. Why do you think global perspective would help more than a national perspective or a local perspective, right? So status quo can be included in terms of where you want this debate to be happening. Like I said earlier, sometimes it's already specified. Sometimes it says that this house as India, this house as the Latin American countries, this house as Gandhi. Sometimes those are called actor motions, where you are given a role of, say, playing Gandhi or playing some other leader. right? Sometimes you are given the context, sometimes you are given status quo. So if you are playing Gandhi, what will your status quo be automatically in terms of space?
It can be in the eras of 1800s and 19s in
It will
India.
definitely be 19, yeah, during the time of independence. You can't say Gandhi in 2022. It doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you are given a time set, sometimes you aren't given a time set. When you aren't given a time set, you would want to set one for yourself, right? Because you can't be debating in a vacuum. All right,
Okay.
I hope that answers. Kunal.
Yes, I had another question.
Oh yeah, you had another question. Yes, go.
Yes, how can we extend or elaborate more on our points?
Okay, that's very simple. Try to think of your argument. You've made one argument. I would like to support ecocentrism because industrialization has made people individualistic. That's my argument, okay? I hope it's not very complex with the words. Industrialization has made people very carefree. Let's just say that, right? Because we are thinking that industrialization will take us everywhere. So Elon Musk comes up with Tesla, says, "Oh, technology can eventually lead to environmental harms being alleviated." He's saying that electronic vehicles will do away with all the harm that fossil fuels cause, right? Which means he's trying to use technology to counter what technology created in the first place. Do you understand? So industrialization has ruined us in a way that we think that technology which actually caused environmental harm can actually counter environmental harm. Do you understand? So that way, my argument is that industrialization has really ruined people's sensibilities, and that is why we need ecocentrism. Now, this is a very assertive argument. This has no analysis. How do I extend it? By thinking about stakeholders now. So for analysis, also think about stakeholders. How will each of my stakeholder be impacted with this argument? If I say industrialization has ruined people's lives, I'm going to talk about industrialists as stakeholders. One, I will say, look, if you adopt ecocentrism, then industrialists will also be able to practice their like ensure that their enterprises are run on eco-friendly parameters, which means that fast fashion will be done away with and legacy brands will come back, right? Something on those lines, right? So there's always a way of finding a solution to the problem by thinking of various stakeholders and what they are likely to do if the world becomes ecocentric, right? Industrialists would do this. Who are my other stakeholders? Who were the other possible stakeholders we discussed? Government. Let me talk about that as well in this constructive. Governments will be better off because now they are lobbying for something that will unite people rather than divide people, right? So environment is something that can bring people together. But right now, what do the governments talk about? Religion, about Hindu Muslim feud, right? This only divides people. So this is also going to be a unifying force. Something I can push that argument as well. Well and good. So you extend an argument by trying to benefit as many people, as many collectives as you can through that argument, which means you expand your argument by elaborating on your stakeholders and how each stakeholder is better off with the argument that you are trying to push. Does that make sense?
Yes, so we can provide alternative solutions and everything.
Yeah, definitely. In a regrets motion, you should definitely give alternatives, but in other motions also it's your call. Because see, if you're regretting something, let's say this house regrets X, then if you're regretting something, you also have to replace that X with something else, right? See, if I regret something, for example, religion, I regretted the existence of religion. Now, religion has some benefits. How do you ensure that those benefits are retained? By replacing religion with something else. Say why. I replace religion with why. So I think religion, not religion, but environmentalism might help people in uniting them, right? Religion is a unifying force. It's a social adhesive, like people call it. So environmentalism can be that too, right? So I mean, I want to regret religion, but I don't want to leave that vacuum. I want to replace it with an alternative, which is environmentalism or other unifying ideologies rather than divisive ideologies. So alternatives always are very good, but you have 3 minutes. So alternatives should be your last priority. If everything in your case is done and dusted, then you can give an alternative. The alternative can also come in your reply speech because it's an alternative. It's like a rebuttal almost to what the other side is saying. Okay. Um,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Kunal?
Ma'am, I have one question. So for status quo, can we use like the world which is right now and the world in which the motion succeeds? Can we compare them so that we can show like what will happen and what is right now?
Definitely. I think that's the best way to go about it in some cases. You want to talk about the world today as it exists, you can always refer to some other world which might come about or which has already gone by. So you can either be retrospective or you can be forward looking in your approach. Okay, but the thing is that in a this house regrets motion, guys, it's always retrospective. Okay, THR debates are always retrospective, which means if this house regrets religion or the existence of religion, this is something that I've discussed earlier also. I can only regret it if religion has been a problem, which means religion is being regretted because it is retrospectively considered. Do you understand? When I regret something, I talk about the harms of it which have been happening and are still happening. So it's retrospective. Anything that you regret will be retrospective. Yes, Aditya.
But compare when it comes to comparison, how could let's say we're like having a debate on why religion has been a causative agent of all the not all the but like prominently the social ills that we face. So how can the comparative study of that in a world that's utopian in the debaters that is for the motion of religion being a causative agent of social ills be retrospective because it's a utopian world we're in our sense we are forward thinking that it should be eradicated. So how like it's not comparison in retrospect but it's taking evidences from the retrospective past that has been troublesome in regards to religion and then framing it into the utopian society that we are going for that doesn't have religion.
I'm quite confused about what you're saying. Can you just like
Ma'am,
concisely put it?
yes, ma'am. So I don't know whose point it was for comparative studies. Was it Adam? I guess. So he was saying that can we compare the world that, let's say, if we are for the notion of religion being should be eradicated, that it should be eradicated. So if we were to compare the world that, like, is the point that to compare the world that doesn't have religion and the world that we live in right
No,
now?
okay, I get your point. I get your point.
Yeah.
So you're saying, can I compare my situation with a situation that is fantastical almost, right?
No, ma'am, but
It's
to
imagined.
yeah, to compare, like you said,
No,
you
no,
put
no.
the point forward
You
that
can't. No, no, no. You can't take utopian circumstances and say that, oh, this world is better, so we should go to that. You have to have an obvious trajectory. You have to lead us to that world. Do you understand? You can't
yes,
just say
ma'am.
that,
So
oh, you think better of
that's what I was explaining. That I was saying that we can take evidences from the past in a retrospective view that religion has been troublesome and caused social ills that have like really oppressed people in whatever shape or form, and then we can use those evidences and factor them into that utopian society that we are wanting to convey through that debate. It's not going to be so emphasized on that utopian society as such, but I'm just saying that to compare it to like to give a vision of it. I'm not saying that we're going to just go on a
you
tangent
can
and just jump
definitely
onto it.
compare. See, this is how I'm going to respond to this question. Whenever there's talk of comparison, no, it only makes sense when you compare two things which are at least remotely possible. Do you understand? So when you're referring to something even retrospectively, and you want to make and you're envisioning a better world, it's fine for you to envision a better world that doesn't even exist right now. But whatever your vision is, it cannot be impractical. You can't say that everybody will stop being greedy at a point in time. That's what I assure as a debater. I mean, how on earth do you do that? How do you do away with that human tendency? Cool. That's my response. So whenever you have to compare between two practicable like circumstances. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Who else? Is there a question? No, I think cool then. We're good to go. I would highly recommend that you guys go back and try to case prep by yourselves. Advisably set a time limit for yourself, like 25 minutes, 20 minutes. Try to come up with these three things: stakeholders, status quo, characterization, and then constructives. Constructives based on your speed. If you think you're a slow speaker, try to make two constructives, okay, and try to do justice to them. Don't think of making five arguments and doing justice to none. That only hurts your case more than benefit it. All right, so according to your pace, according to your speed, go ahead and draft arguments. But one thing that you shouldn't skip is characterization, status quo, and stakeholders. That just gives you a stronghold that nobody else can beat if it's strong enough. Okay, so that's it from my end for today. Thank you guys for joining in and being proactively involved. Any questions that are still unanswered, we'll take them through Google Form. Okay, so don't be disgruntled about that. All right, then have a good day. Let's meet tomorrow for practice session. Like it'll be speech delivery and everything tomorrow. Okay. All right. Good day. Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Arush, is there a question?
Yes.
Yes, please.
So in the debate, when we do it, is it going to help us if we use sources? So we say that according to this, like the statistics, and so we can use that as points for our debate. Would that be helpful?
Statistics, like I said, always and always secondary, second fiddle. Okay, when you have given your analysis, when you've given your argument that comes only from you, and it's your logical reasoning that's been applied to that, then you can substantiate it with a statistical data. But don't just throw
Only.
statistics around. Okay.
Okay. So we use our own reasoning, and we can use statistics to back up our own reasoning.
Yeah, yes. But very frankly speaking, your statistical data doesn't have as much weightage as your reasoning does. So don't compromise your reasoning or the length of it for statistical data to be like shoved in as well into the speech.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't use sources, we just use a good logical reason.
Yeah. And sometimes examples can be hypothetical as well. They don't have to be data heavy. Do you
And does
understand?
it
As long
help
as
if we use multiple perspectives?
multiple perspectives
As in if some motion, if it's to bring about some change, if you use multiple perspectives to see if that change is helpful for everyone, not just
yeah. Use your stakeholders, no, in that argument. If you want to talk about reformation happening from multiple angles, talk about it in terms of stakeholders. That these are the stakeholders involved, and these are the reforms that will happen in each of their lives.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Surat, is there a question?
Yes. Will the for the debate tomorrow, will we use the same topic?
Not really. No. We're going to have another motion. I'll share it by tonight itself, I guess, and then you can prep on it as much as you can, and then we'll meet tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Gauri?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, what are the examples of stakeholders?
Yeah, so this house supports feminism would be, so if the example was this house supports feminism, then the stakeholders would be women, because feminism is about women mostly, but other gender minorities as well. It'll be about society. Okay, so your stakeholders can be individuals like women, or women in different households or whatever, or your stakeholders could be collectives like the society at large or the government. So those are stakeholders. Who is being impacted by the debate that we're having? Those are your stakeholders. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Surat, is there another question?
Yes, sorry. Would we use, suppose the topic is feminism, so would we use misogynistic people also as stakeholders, because we will be changing their perspective on, like it will be impacting their perspective.
Definitely. Yeah. So definitely, yes. So those are people who are being impacted by what you're saying, right? So they become
Yes.
automatic stakeholders.
Okay.
Stakeholders aren't only people who are like all do-gooders. It's also people who you want to reform, who you want to make better, because they're part of the society.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. I think that should be it. We call it a day. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.